ever heard that phrase, "we've got our wires crossed"? We say it anytime things get mixed up, like when you thought your mom said she'd pick you up at the Wendy's near your school, what she actually said was she'd pick you up Wednesday after school. Or your teacher said, "You better finish this project Sunday because it's due next week," and what you heard was, "Finish the project someday?" It's an honest mistake.
Now maybe you're wondering where this phrase comes from. Well, it has to do with phones, the history of phones. Now, it doesn't make a lot of sense to us now because our phones today are wireless. Even 10 years ago, phones were still wireless. But 30 years ago, phones had cords. And even before that, they were attached to walls. But even before that, there was a time when people didn't even do the actual dialing. What you did was you connected to an operator and then told her who you wanted to talk to, and then she would literally connect your wire to somebody else's wire so you could hear each other, which is bizarre, right? I mean, think of all the stuff that the operator heard you say.
Occasionally, as you can imagine, the operator made mistakes. Like you're trying to get connected to Bob, but you ended up talking to a random guy named George instead. Your wires got crossed. So that's where the phrase comes from. And I wonder, have you ever had your wires crossed with somebody?
At home, you're surrounded by the people who can drive you the craziest. Your family. Without a doubt, some wires will end up getting crossed.
At school, there are so many different demands from so many different teachers, not to mention coaches and counselors. And in your attempt to juggle it all, wires get crossed.
And with your friends, it can feel like you need a bomb squad to negotiate all the different wires. Like there's so many different personalities, so much history, so many things to remember, so many opportunities to say the wrong thing or annoy or hurt someone. And when you take one wrong step, suddenly it can be like matching a red wire with a blue one instead of a green one, and all of a sudden there are massive explosions happening.
The point is, it can feel like no matter where we turn in our lives that there's always the potential for crossed wires. With every relationship, there's the potential for disaster, for hurt, for anger.
Does that mean that we're simply supposed to not live life with people? Some of you are excited at the potential of hanging a "Keep Out, No Sisters Allowed" sign on your door. What's the point of relationships if they're just going to end up in confusion or conflict? We're pretty much guaranteed that there are going to be misunderstandings and miscommunications. Crossed wires. That's a tension, right? I mean, that's something we deal with. And as much as we would like to disconnect our wires from others, it's not really an option because you were wired for something different.
We've been looking at the beginning of creation and how God created humans. God made Adam, and his job was to care for the garden. We aren't told how long Adam was working solo. It could have been days, maybe years. But at some point, God saw that it wasn't good for Adam to be alone. Genesis 2:18 says, "It is not good for man to be alone."
So out of everything that God had made, there was only one thing that he said wasn't good. It wasn't good for man to be alone. And so God made Eve. But see, God wasn't just saying Adam needed a wife. God was saying Adam needed company. He needed some conversation. The man needed some community. Like giraffes and monkeys ain't gonna cut it. Adam needed a real living person. And so God gave him Eve.
From the beginning, God wired us for community. Community is about people, others, but it's more than that too. It's commitment to helping and bettering people, even when it's inconvenient and frustrating and wires get crossed. Community is about connecting.
In the book of Matthew, Jesus tells his disciples what the two most important things in life are. Number one, loving God. And number two, loving people. He said it this way: love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments.
Remember, God saw that it wasn't good for man to be alone. So part of his plan is for us to live life together with each other. But then Jesus takes it one step further. Jesus says, don't just be in community, love your community. Because here's the deal. Loving God and loving people, they're connected. If we want to show God how much we love him, we need to get really good at loving each other. In other words, we need to cross wires without getting our wires crossed. God's plan for your life is for you to demonstrate who He is by connecting with and caring for those around you. God's plan for you is to be in and for you to love your community. That happens by crossing your wires. You love community by being connected to the people around you.
And this isn't always easy. It would be way easier to connect with people if they were exactly like you. Like if they looked like you, thought like you, talked like you, wore the same clothes as you do, listened to the same kind of music, laughed at the same jokes, and believed the same things that you do. I mean, that sounds easy, right? Of course it does. Because basically, you would just be in community with yourself.
But the world is made up of a lot of different people, and you don't have to go halfway around the world to find them. Start in your own family. Your brother already acts like he's from another planet. Your mom already acts like she's from a different century. See, right in front of your very eyes, you have people different from you, challenging you when it comes to connecting. And Jesus says to love your neighbor.
So what does it look like to love your community? Well, it starts by accepting people for who they are, by not seeing their differences as things to keep you apart, but as unique parts of them that God created and that you appreciate. It means seeing differences not as things to avoid, but as things to celebrate and understand. Accepting people who are different from you is a way to appreciate and love God and love others too.
We were created to connect with others. And sometimes connecting to other people can be messy. But no matter how messy it may be, we were wired for it because we do this to show the love of God to others and to be changed ourselves.
As you leave, I want you to think about something. I want you to think about one person you can begin to connect better with this week. It may be a step sibling, a friend, or even a teacher, but think of someone you can show acceptance to. It doesn't have to be this big dramatic thing. It can be as simple as listening when they speak or choosing to sit next to them at lunch. And if you do this, I guarantee it'll make a difference in their lives. And not only in their lives, but in your life too.